Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 356. I'm your co-host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is the 1st of the 3rd, the 1st of March. February is gone. Never to be seen again. Bye-bye. February 2024 will never be with us again. Imagine that. Have a moment for it. And let's enjoy March as it comes before us. March of 2024. So once you are inside the live, if you are viewing this over on Instagram, on TikTok, or on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. Double tap the screen on TikTok. If you ever wonder, that's how you hit that like button. And it really does help with, you know, the algorithm, allowing our algorithmic masters to know, hey, this is some good stuff. Send out the notification to some more people. If you are viewing this on repeat over on YouTube, you should hit that like button too. Right about now is a good time. Take that pause right before you get into the video. You hit that like button, allow the algorithm to know this is some good stuff. And if you are not subscribed to my YouTube channel, Nathan Springer, over on YouTube, and you would be able to find all of those lives there and all of the other videos over on my channel. Good stuff. Head over and subscribe and you would be able to know that yes, I am indeed from Trinidad. If you watch all of those lives, it becomes very clear where I am from. You having other guests soon? Are you talking about like the TikTok guests as we usually have, or do you mean live? If you mean live, well, we're working on that. I first have to, you know, get the studio properly furnished. Once it's properly furnished, of course, the intention is to have people there. Let's have an actual live discussion, a panel on the show. That would be real good. That'll be good. We're looking forward to that. Positive, you're flying for that one, bro? I'm asking as if I don't know. I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. Let's jump into some of the news. Diabetes Association regulate fast food ads. Bring new taxes. A recent Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago survey found some 88.4% of young people between the ages of 11 and 35 in Trinidad and Tobago consume fast food once a week, with over 1/3 of this group doing so more than 3 times in the same period. And I believe that number may be underestimated. I believe that money may be underestimated, if we're being honest. 88.4%, yes. Lots of Trinis eat fast food on a very regular basis. We are regular fast food eaters, especially many of those in the younger generation. In the younger generation, many people don't eat bodi and roti and all of that kind of thing. There's no sada and talcary in the morning. Of course, positive. Yeah, there's no sada and talcary in the morning for many of these young people anymore. It's fast food all the way down. All the way down, it's fast food. Many of them don't even like the taste of anything that isn't fast food. I watch that as a teacher. You see that sometimes some parents that fuel these kinds of habits. You're looking in preschool and seeing children coming with lunch, and the lunch is fast food. The lunch was last night fast food that we went out with, and the extras you get for lunch this morning. And children 4 years old getting this on a continual basis. You're like, people, what's going on? I love a good sada and pumpkin in Kuva in the morning, bro. Sada is life. Sada is life. A good sada and nearly anything. Last night I was gonna speak about the Baji story that I understood as I grew up, as I got older. And what I understood about Baji as I got older is I used to think Baji was some kind of something in specific. And as I got older, I recognized that Baji is dependent on how desperate you are. Baji, just about anything could be Baji if you're hungry enough. There's a wide range of grasses and bushes that can be cooked and eaten if you're hungry enough. And with asada, good stuff. Good stuff. But the young people of the modern times, generally, they aren't interested in that. Much more of a fast food culture. The finding has led the association to call for a comprehensive approach to get the products out of schools and communities, including bans on advertising and taxes to discourage consumption. Now, I don't think there are many schools that have fast food outlets there. But how would you get this food out of schools and communities? Okay, bans on advertising. That might work to some extent. But when we're talking about companies like Royal Castle, KFC, those companies that have been here for a long period of time. Like, let's be honest. The last time you bought KFC or Royal Castle, did it have anything to do with any advertisement you saw? Like, I don't think KFC's ads are even that much necessary anymore. We all know what KFC gives. It's like alcohol. Punching doesn't need to advertise for people to buy and back the punching, you know. People know what the punching gives and they get it. No, the ads on the highway, very important. That is a good point, Reeve. I think the ads on the highway may influence the direction you go. You know, you see a KFC ad. You see a KFC ad and all right, well, that might be where I'm going. But I don't think the ads make people choose fast food or not fast food. It might make you select which fast food outlet you might go. But I don't think those ads make you or choose or not choose fast food. And the taxes angle. The taxes angle. All taxes really do is make the product more expensive. Fabian King says, I think it's more so with parenting. Parents try to save time or just lazy, not will take the time. I agree with you. I agree with you nearly 100%. And I think a large part of why we see a younger generation that is addicted to fast food, eating fast food constantly, is because women aren't in the home the same amount anymore. So, okay, the mothers work much more now, so they get more money. Now, with that more money, you can give your child a more comfortable life. And what's included in that more comfortable life? Well, more fast food. Because obviously, you're working. You can't cook the same amount that you're cooking that your parents used to cook. Some of those tanties of old were cooking 3 meals every day for 10 children. You can't be working full-time and doing that kind of madness. That in itself is a full-time job. So when we have those people no longer in the homes, and I'm not giving it a moral standing here. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad or indifferent. I'm just saying the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in. And you if you no longer have someone in the home to do that duty, well, you'd have to pay for it. It's one of those opportunity costs. Some people say, well, you can't survive. That's okay, Fabian King, no apology necessary. Some people say you can't survive in modern times without a 2-income household. How are you going to do that? And da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And okay, if that's what you believe, but you understand that you're sacrificing time with your child in order to give them fast food. Is that a sensible choice? The alarming revelation came from the ATT in a release as it threw its support behind Health Minister Terence Dialsing, who on Monday called out popular fast food chains such as KFC, Royal Castle and Coca-Cola for their role in encouraging the scourge of non-communicable diseases like diabetes and hypertension in the country with its products. But here's my issue with what they are calling here. With what they are talking about with the bans and increasing taxes and no advertising and all of that. Reeves says, I personally find Trinidad have too much food stores in general. I am telling you that's because people are working. That's it. If all women return to home, well, not return to home like all women were in the home, but if all mothers are full-time mothers cooking for their children, you would see much less fast food. But we have a hustle and bustle culture and general community. So even the sada roti is now fast food to some extent. Sada roti is a big number sale on a morning. Listen, I think if you went back 40 years and tried to sell sada roti in Trinidad, people would have laughed at you. Like, what you mean you're selling sada roti? Like, you mean the thing that mommy have piled up in heaps inside the kitchen? I'm going to come out here and pay for that? Well, all mothers don't want to cook good, eh? Sorry to say. Reeve, nobody need to cook good for you to survive, you know? I am sure there were many mothers who were not good cooks, but KFC wasn't always around. Somehow the children ate that bad food coming through the eons and they lived. Ah, Rooney, I like that line. I like that line. I like that line. I don't need to take notes. I made these notes. Boom. Eating too much roti is not a good meal. Fact, Leslie. I'm not denying that. I'm not talking about the health basis of the roti necessarily. I was just talking about the availability. But yes, roti in a very large amount is not very good food. But if we're talking comparison here, and you're comparing the roti with the fast food from the fast food outlets, I would say I might take my chances with the extra carbohydrates. But the suggestion to get the prices up basically to make people buy it less sounds strange to me. When I read an article like this, customers unfazed by KFC price increase. As members of the public look to social media to discuss the increase in KFC prices, Prestige Holdings CEO Simon Hardy, in a phone interview with Newsday, described the increase as relatively small in scale. And as they looked out over the KFC branches, they recognized that, there was no real difference in the sales. Make your roti healthier with some wheat and flax seed. Well, there is that. Or you could eat less roti, more talcary. Change the ratios. That's something that, we could look into as a culture. Some of those ratios in the eating. Yes, kinda is, Leslie. Some of those ratios in the eating are off. When you get this whole mountain of rice here and you sprinkle some peas and throw 2 pieces of chicken there, your ratios are a bit off. You need less carbs to some more proteins. Some of those ratios were poverty ratios. Back in the poor days, you took the thing that would fill your belly and was the cheapest and you stuck it to the hilt. And the stuff with the flavor that was a bit more expensive, you have to use it a bit more sparingly. So plenty rice and some of the peas and chicken. But you don't need all that rice anymore. You aren't working in the cane fields. You aren't doing any manual labor out there. This big mountain of rice to go and sit at a desk and type all day. You looking to choke out your arteries. That's just too much. That's too much sugar. You don't need all that energy. So change your ratios. Boy, Nathan, as you say that, you see some people pilau. Hey. Pilau is a kind of thing, eh? I like pilau. But I fully understand why there are many people who don't like pilau, because you could get pilau wrong. There are many ways you could get this pilau business wrong. And yeah, it's a ratio kind of scene. Even with the sada, don't eat piles of sada this much with a little talcary. Eat more talcary and less sada. Change your ratios. You work out, bro. I work. It's been a while since I did anything really work out-ish, to be honest. It's been a while. That's my favorite meal. It hurts my heart to eat a bad one. I've eaten some bad pilau. But I recognize something. A good coleslaw is able to to adjust a mediocre pilau, you know. The coleslaw it's like makeup. Coleslaw is like makeup. The pilau is a 5, but the coleslaw make it a little 6, 7. Covers a multitude of sin. Coleslaw is love. Coleslaw is love out here. Coleslaw is love. That's what coleslaw is on the pilau. It's love. It covers a multitude of sin. My goodness. But yeah, how do we expect to tax people out of bad eating if when KFC raises its prices, the line goes out the door now self? I wonder if someone could do research on that, if KFC would allow someone to get some of their data like that. Has there ever been a time in Trinidad and Tobago where a price increase from KFC resulted in even a blip in their sales? Ever make a good pilau and lazy to make coleslaw, so you go buy KFC and and you reminded KFC can't make it? I don't know if I've eaten a KFC coleslaw. Like for me, this is a me thing. I grew up a bit more natural than that. You see, when it comes to KFC and their coleslaw and their mashed potato, I get the feeling like it's not cabbage and it's not potato in those two sides. It feels a bit too synthetic for me. That's my taste. It just feels a bit synthetic. So everything in the grocery and deals are the stuff that ain't good for you, Mark said. But you know, if you're basically suggesting here that things that are good for you are expensive, that's not necessarily true. I regularly make the point, lots of the local produce are not very difficult to grow, and if you are interested enough, you would get it for pretty cheap. There are many things healthy but cheap. When people say eating healthy is expensive, they usually mean eating healthy and fancy is expensive. They don't really mean that eating healthy in and of itself is expensive. There's healthy food very inexpensive, but it mightn't be pretty. It mightn't be attractive. If you want to eat healthy and pretty, well, that's where they're going to get you. But speaking about people's true intentions here, an article we'll jump into, something that I saw someone speak about. Someone suggested about 2 lives ago a suggestion, and it's a question we regularly get. Trinidad and Tobago on its self-destructive path. An article, a commentary by one Rex Chukulingo. I suppose that's Subrike. Will the political genre we have inherited from our forefathers and the white overlords in Britain be our downfall? Our constitution is so biased in terms of who it favors and who it does not, that those who had no say in its construction, the poor, the blacks, the indentured, and women, were neglected by the powers that held us in low esteem because they only saw us as worker bees, but who were not intelligent enough to be anything else than laborers. Our constitution was based on British laws and the Westminster system, which is hundreds of years old, where whites were the kings and queens and all others were peasants who existed at their pleasure, which is whatever the royal family unilaterally doled out to them. The problem with the Westminster model is the model's lack of governance, oversight, and colonial mindset, which has led to a crisis that includes severe government corruption, deepening poverty, upticks in crime, debt, and decreasing trade opportunities. This makes life harder for citizens and threatens to destabilize the democracies, with no one nation situated to cope with these existential challenges. National independence for the region was designed to maintain the status quo of colonial times while providing the illusion of autonomy and individual sovereignty. The promised benefit of going from British rule to an independent nation is that we can make our own decisions about who will govern us as leaders and laws without having external interference by a foreign power such as the British Parliament, with rules that may not apply specifically to us. We went from having a head of state, Queen Elizabeth II, represented locally by a Governor General. Then we became a republic in 1976. The head of state, our president, was a figurehead just as the Queen was. Even then, I'm reading the entire article to get the general idea they're talking about, going through the history of how we ended up as it is. This brings us to the existential state of politics in Trinidad and Tobago, how it impacts everything we say and do in work and play. Even though we spent billions throughout the various political transitions, was it all for naught to the citizenry? Were the politicians the only ones to benefit? How would things be different if King Charles III was still our head of state? We would be the protectorate of the UK and all the benefits that accrue, such as having the British Armed Forces, Scotland Yard, and intelligence agencies having our backs, the Security Service, military intelligence, the UK's domestic counterintelligence and security agency, the Secret Intelligence Service MI6, government communication headquarters, and defense intelligence would all be in our corner. Indeed, these elite armed forces and their intelligence experts would have been able to anticipate and quell the criminal elements in our society, thereby preventing the lawlessness that pervades the land. What about white-collar crime? Those criminals were emboldened from the day we became an independent nation and are the foundational cause of the ills of Trinidad and Tobago society. No race or religious differences made the country what it has become, as many allege. Greed is the great corrupter. Furthermore, staying under the protective umbrella of the UK is not as ridiculous as it sounds. 14 territories enjoy protectorate status. Each territory has its own constitution, government, and local laws, but with the representation of a governor general. That is the reparations we should demand from the UK to bring us back into the fold and restore sanity to beleaguered citizens. We should find the courage to admit we have failed to become a nation where all citizens are treated equally despite their political leaning. That is why we have become so corrupt and have learned to accept it as the norm. That is until now that the criminals, the gangs have arrived at our doorsteps. We need to make a 180-degree turn to return to the fun-loving, accepting, respectful people we once were. What y'all think? Would we have been better off had we remained a dependency of the United Kingdom? Would we be better off now if we return to England and say, England, govern us, please? We don't know what we're doing, England. Please govern us. Would that be better for us? There are a large contingent of people in Trinidad and Tobago that actually do believe that. Just by the way. Many people do. Now, I like to be honest. I like to be honest with these things. And if we're being honest with these things, many of the people with the view of holding to the UK or going back to the UK are of a one particular racial cultural group. Fact. East Indians in Trinidad and Tobago are those who you tend to find that view from more. Fact. Let's be honest about it. As Trinis, the East Indian population in Trinidad is where you get that view more. It may have something to do with the history where they were not necessarily enslaved, but the indentureship, maybe there's less bad blood there. Who knows all the reasonings for it? But something that I regularly like to note when this conversation is brought up is that people don't actually believe that Trinidad would have been better off, I think. People believe that they would have had a better life as an English citizen. That's really and truly what they're saying. And, I mean, okay, I don't necessarily deny that. That's like saying if we were American citizens, our lives would have been easier, generally speaking. That's generally true. So does that mean that the US should become the colonial power of every country that has a lower GDP than them? Because that's actually what they're saying. They're saying that this country is more prosperous than us. If we were citizens of that country, we would be better off. Yes, possibly true. But that doesn't mean that Trinidad and Tobago as an entity would have actually been better off. As in, the people that attempt to make this place their home and get the best result out of it. As in, the resources of this spot, if it would have benefited the people that were born and raised in this spot the most. I don't think that would have happened if we remained as a colony, basically. If you look at the countries that he mentioned there, that are still British overseas territories, they are tiny countries, underdeveloped countries, backwater countries. So basically, what would have happened very likely, you would have been able to go to England and be a citizen in the hub, the metropolis of London, but Trinidad would have remained a backwater country. Maybe a population of 100,000 people. Okay, say that you're a fan of globalization. Say that you always have a view of going to the bigger and the better. Say that you don't have the interest in working to make this thing bigger and better. Fine. But that's not what countries are about. Countries are the understanding that we know that we aren't the same size, don't have the same power as some other large country, but we are attempting to carve our own destiny out here. That's the aim here. It's like if you sell yourself as a slave to Elon Musk, and he is a kind slave master, it is possible that you may live a more luxurious life as a slave to Elon Musk than as a free, independent Trinidadian. That's possible. That might even be likely. Because if you're Elon Musk's slave, you'd be going around in luxury airplanes, luxury jets, luxury vehicles. You would be eating basically around what he's eating, to good stuff. But you're a slave. So, would you rather be the luxurious slave or live the difficulty of freedom? Because that is what freedom is. Difficulty. There's challenge and risk in freedom. That is the reality. Always is. So, to me, many of the people who are saying things like that are basically saying that they would never step out on their own, out of their parents' bounds. Let your parents control your life till you die. Because very likely they may make better decisions than you. And here's an interesting thing. That I look at coming out of this. And we'll see the relations. Court open air pyre cremation ban was discriminatory to Hindus after August 2021. For some 5 months, the government's COVID-19 guidelines on open-air pyre cremations were unconstitutional and became discriminatory against the Hindu community, a High Court justice has said in a written decision. On February 27, Justice Avison Quinlan Williams provided a written ruling on a lawsuit filed by the daughter of a COVID-19 victim who had challenged the 2020 guidelines for funeral homes at the height of the pandemic in 2020. Back then, I was talking about this. The government banned open-air cremation for COVID-19 victims, and there was no actual scientific proof that COVID could have spread from the burning of COVID-19 victim bodies. There was no logical reason for that ban. Someone sued, and our court system upheld that ban on open-air pyre cremations was discriminatory, and the government cannot do it. That's here in Trinidad and Tobago. And it was discriminatory against Hindus and the Hindu community. And interestingly enough, as we are talking about, we're being honest here. We're being honest about demographics and decisions in Trinidad and Tobago. The East Indian community, by extension, the Hindu community, are generally where you find the sentiments of maybe independence wasn't the ideal choice. And I mean, when you consider some of the racial divisions of our politics and the fact that with racially divided politics, the country was led by one group for a lengthy period of time. You could understand another group not necessarily being happy with all of that. But let's look comparatively at what life might have been like if we remained under British rule. Hindu Sikhs court ruling on open air cremations. This is an article from since 2008 out of the United Kingdom. Davinder Kumar Gai wants ban lifted for his ceremony to follow religious tradition. A Hindu man is to ask the High Court to overturn a ban on open-air cremations to allow the ancient religious ritual to take place in Britain. He's challenging Newcastle City Council's decision to deny him an open-air cremation when he dies. In 2006, the local authority blocked his attempt to establish Britain's first approved site for burning bodies in the open, ruling it would breach cremation laws. Human rights lawyers will argue that open-air pyres fall outside the 1902 Cremation Act, which regulates what happens inside a crematorium, defined as any building fitted with appliances for the purpose of burning human remains. In other words, in Britain, open-air cremation is illegal. A Hindu man was attempting to sue for it to be allowed since 2008. By the way, that case was resolved. Ban on open-air cremations upheld. 2009. The High Court has rejected the argument that prohibition on open-air cremations in the United Kingdom amounted to a violation of human rights. The judgment issued on 8 May affects those who believe that failure to have their bodies burned on an open pyre would have a devastating effect on them in the afterlife. Under the Cremation Act 1902 and regulations made in 2008, it is a criminal offense to burn human remains other than in a crematorium. A crematorium is defined as a building, so all that is required is that cremations take place in buildings. The Secretary of State for Justice, who appeared as an interested party for the proceedings, argued that others in the community would be upset and offended by open-air funeral pyres and would find it abhorrent that human remains were being burned in that way. So, you have the option of choosing a society where you get to mold what are the cultural norms and practices and mores of your own society. You could mold it in how you see life should be, in your view of life and death. That's what independence allows. Or you could go and tag yourself along to people who find your practices and way of life abhorrent and who have made it illegal over a century now. That's the difference between independent Trinidad and still tagging along to the United Kingdom as a colony, Trinidad. It's interesting to me that people who may be most affected by such things are people who don't seem to understand the reality of it. Where you're able to decide how I want to live, or you're not. Yeah, Rooney. I'm gonna make sure my volume right. Yeah, Rooney, what's up?
I just wanted to make this good night, everybody. I'm just here, no?
Yeah. Loud and clear.
I just wanted to make the point of the countries, and I spoke to it a little bit, the countries that kept, they really offer nothing.
Correct.
They have nothing for them to take. You could imagine Trinidad with 2 booths. Would have been extracted and gone straight to the end of, and they would give us a percent. Kind of like what Tobago is arguing. Trinidad do to them. So imagine what would I be going through under England in this regard? That I take our oil and then decide, well, here, take our 5%.
You see, but I think many of the people that argue that, their belief isn't that they would have been in Trinidad. They don't care. It's not like if it's not like if we remained as a colony, they would have still been here getting the little small pittance percentages and living the backwater life. They would have gone. That's no, but it's not the same. It's not the same. You are not a British citizen. And that's what I think they want. They want it to be that I would have been a British citizen. I would have had birthright citizenship to England, basically. And that's the privilege they want. Not that Trinidad, I would have been a Trini and my life would have been so much better. No, I would have been British. And I missed the opportunity to be British. And now you all have me with this ugly, worthless Trinidad passport. Shucks. That's the problem.
Sad. You don't really care to the country as it. And I mean, come on. England is one of the first world countries that are talking. I'm sure they would be welcomed by people. You shouldn't speak in your presence because you've been so oppressed for so long. They could get still.
No, they won't necessarily be welcomed with open arms everywhere, and they wouldn't have all opportunities just the same. But
wouldn't have been welcome with open arms anyway in most time, in most places, because they would have this the wrong religion, so they would have still had the issue.
I agree.
So it doesn't matter.
I agree. But I think that's what I'm saying. What I see is that many of the people, when I look at the arguments, many of the people, it seems to me the argument is we would have been better off as British citizens. Not that Trinidad and Tobago necessarily would have been better developed. I don't think many people actually believe that because the evidence isn't there. You don't look at the British overseas territories and see them as bastions of good development. They don't want to develop those places. It's like the example you used with how Trinidad treats Tobago to some extent is pretty accurate. Many Trinidadians, if you ask them, they don't want Tobago to become too developed. I don't want Tobago to be overly developed. It would lose what I find is special about it. But for Tobagonians, if you're living in Tobago, you might want some industry. You want to be able to make some good industry money too. You don't only want to be walking around waiting for tourists to come and give you a little something here and there. You want some industry and to be able to make it first world status too. So it's that kind of argument. Would it have been that we were just here and purposefully kept as a kind of backwater, relaxed, shoot the breeze? You know, Trinidad is in slow motion and da. Yeah, you're looking at that in the fantasy sense and like, oh, that would have been so cool and cute and quaint. But what would your pay been like? What would life have been like? Trinidadians, all this fast food we were eating, we were talking about before, that we love. It's because we are a wealthy country. People don't eat fast food because they are poor. That's not the truth. Maybe in the United States to some extent because their system is weird. But in Trinidad and Tobago, that's not how it goes. People eating fast food, it's not because they lack resources. It's because Trinidad is a wealthy country. The kind of money and move that everyone has as a citizen of Trinidad. Trinidadians act like wealthy people. We live a culture, live a life of generally global wealth. I don't think we would have been the same country if we remained as a United Kingdom overseas territory. I just don't think that's true. All right. I see here the last little bit I saw here out of the news is I saw that Jack Warner is aiming to unite the He's trying to, get in there and be the peacemaker among the small parties. That would be interesting because Jack Warner back in 2010 under the partnership, the winning partnership, Jack Warner was an integral player back then too. So that'll be interesting to see. Crude Oil says people eat fast food because it's cheaper to do so, not because of wealth. That is wrong. That is wrong. That is wrong. It's not cheaper. And that's a lie. And it's ironic to me that so many poor people buy this lie. I think they buy it because they like buying it. They like saying that I'm only eating all the fast food because I'm poor, And they fat. They overweight. And as a poor man, and that is why I eating all this fat. No. That's not true. You're eating it because you like the taste. And it became within your affordable range. If it was out of your affordable range, if there was no KFC in Trinidad and Tobago, if there was no Royal Castle, there was no fast food outlet, would the poor people have died? Well, bro, I did a study on it, so I'm not speaking on whims and fancies. Show me where your study was published. Tell me where I can read this study and your methodology and see your results and see if it's reproducible, because almost all social sciences have a crisis in reproducing the studies that they purport to create. So I'm not buying it. Show me the study. It's not true. You look at the poorest countries in the world. Look at the poorest countries in the world. Do you see them overweight, fat on the hug, with Church's Chicken, Royal Castle, KFC, Popeyes? How many KFC branches are there in Haiti, Equatorial Guinea, DRC, Congo? How many KFCs are there? Because poverty is why people eat fast food. So the poorest countries in the world should have the most fast food by that logic. Like, who buys this foolishness? It's only, you have to go to university and be indoctrinated by a professor in a room where they treat you as an idiot for 3 years for someone to tell you that the reason people pay $36, well, 40-something dollars for a meal this big is because they're poor. You have to be educated into stupidity to believe that. It literally does not make sense. If you're too poor, you're going in the forest and digging yam. You all know yam free in the forest, right? You all know that. You could go in the forest and dig yam to fill you and your family belly for weeks. For free. I'm not speaking to him directly when I say that, Sylvan. I'm speaking to that mentality. You could go and dig yam for free. You all know pawpaw trees are throughout the forest in Trinidad and Tobago. You don't need to buy pawpaw. You could go in the forest, dig yam, pick pawpaw for free. It's not poverty that causes people to buy fast food. That's not true. That's probably, you know what? That's probably a marketing campaign. That's probably a marketing campaign from the fast food outlets. That is, as I said, it makes sense. That is, I think, excellent marketing by fast food outlets. They've marketed themselves to the poorer class of people so well. The poorer class of people actually believe that this expensive, unhealthy food is the best thing for me. That is marketing. That is marketing. That Somehow you've convinced the entire Western world, developed world, that what poor people should do when you're poor is you go and work endless hours in a dead-end job to make barely any cash and have no time so you could use your barely any cash to get fast food, because that's what poor people should do. I feel you, Darian. I feel you. I don't buy it. Mayor Bloomberg, in the days in New York, he wanted to tax the poor people harder because his belief was that the poor people don't know how to spend money. When the poor people are given money, they go and buy unhealthy food. That was a billionaire's view. And he wasn't totally wrong. I mean, it sounded elitist, but he wasn't totally wrong. It's not that poverty causes you to buy fast food, but that many people in poverty some of them are in poverty because of poor decisions made. That's just a fact. People don't like to admit that. People like to make it seem like everyone who might be poor are all victims of circumstance, but a lot of poverty is fault of decision and choices. And many people who make poor choices in their food too. They make poor eating choices. Like, if I were to eat 3 meals of KFC per day, that would cost me what? 40 by 3? $120 or something like that? Are you really convinced, Mr. Crude Oil, are you really convinced that as a poor person, you cannot get 3 meals per day for less than $120? Did a study convince you of that? Which research could make you believe something like that? $120 is the cheapest you could get 3 meals for? If you think that, you need to go speak to some of those older people, the older heads, who could explain to you how they could feed an entire family for a week with $120. Back in the days, the carny workers, who were kind of the lower end of the working poor, some might consider them. Were the carny workers the prime candidates for fast food? I don't think so. I don't think so. So, listen, many studies are lies. I'm telling you, I'm not against education. I'm not against information. That's what we talk about all the time here. But understand, many studies are lies. Many people go at a study trying to prove a conclusion in the first place. And social studies, social sciences are extremely difficult to honestly do those studies on. Because it's very easy to taint a study one way or the other. And more people are recognizing those studies have been tainted. It's out of the social sciences that we could get people to convince people that there's nothing like a woman and gender is socially constructed totally. Rubbish. Rubbish. But some study could convince people of that. You could convince people with a study that $120 is the cheapest you could get a meal, 3 meals a week for the day for, while the person in reality could look around and see that's not true. You could convince somebody with a study that we can't tell the difference between men and women. You know, a study proved that. There was a study done by XYZ University and Professor so-and-so. And in that study, they realized that the differences between men and women are minuscule and unnoticeable to the general public. And they will tell you that with a stone cold straight face out of a study, and you know you could walk the road and say man, woman, girl, boy, man, woman, with reasonable certainty. Careful with these studies. Many studies attempt to convince you of things that are obviously untrue using study. To me, I've said this, the secular humanist world uses peer review as their Bible. It's like how religious people have their religious texts, and they believe their religious texts are holy, and they believe that it's the word of God, or it's the guidance of God, or it's the guidance of a higher power. For the humanist secularists, their religion, they attempt to make religion, a science, a religion. And science is not supposed to function like that. And they religiously hold to the peer review as if it's infallible. But many people have gamed the peer review system. If you don't know what the peer review is that's how you get published studies. You get peers who are educated and recognized in that field to review what you wrote, what you studied, what you experimented on. They review it and they give you guidelines, what doesn't make sense, what needs to tweak, if it's perfect, etc., etc. If they pass it, then it's a published study. And that published study, upon being peer reviewed, are seen by some as being hard, cold, stone cold fact. Nothing could deny that being fact. But the peer review system is gamed all the time, and it's not true. And it creates basically a religion out of science. It's just a modern day religion where people are following the scriptures of the peer review studies, regardless of whether they make sense or not. So a peer review study could tell you poor people need to buy fast food. Your lived experience, the life you live looking around you, tells you this is obviously not true. But my religious text tells me it's true, so you believe what the religion says is true. Because that's what faith requires of you. You have faith in this. It's not actually science anymore. So much junk science is peer reviewed. Fact. Because a lot of the peers believe the junk too. Anyway, people, that's all I have for now. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. Are there any questions or comments inside of the live before I dive out? The consensus says man is changing the climate dangerously. I'm sure man has an effect on the climate. That is without a doubt. I don't doubt that a moment. All right. If there are no further questions or comments, this would be my exit. I thank you for tuning in. This has been the Mindful Live. I am Nathan Springer. Have yourselves a good weekend. And I'll see you again next week, Monday, for the next Mindful Live. The professor who did the what? Today was episode 356. 356. I'm waiting, Ronnie. I'm waiting. Don't worry. Are you I'm jumping the gun trying to assume what you're talking about. I don't know if you're talking about what's this guy? James Lindsay and those police brutality and race. I forgot his name. It's Harvard, one of those Ivy League schools. A black guy did that study and people hated him for his study. The peers told him, yeah, not to release it. The peers told him, don't release it, sir. Please, please, please. It's all ideology, all the way down. So careful with these studies, especially when they're pointing to things that obviously aren't true in reality. All right, people, hold it on. Have a good weekend. Stay well, stay safe. Peace out. Bye.